After a fairly active disaster season in 2007, Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management staff were hoping for a relatively quiet year in 2008. They would be disappointed. It's been 10 years since that summer. The official FEMA designation for the events that occurred from May through August 2008 is Disaster 1763. To date, more than $2 billion in funding from the state of Iowa, FEMA, and the U.S. Small Business Administration have helped Iowa communities recover from that disaster. It all started the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend, May 25, 2008, when the first EF5 tornado to strike the state since 1976 charged across 43 miles of Butler and Black Hawk counties. When it was over, the storm would cause 9 people to lose their lives, injure more than 70 others, and inflict millions of dollars in damage.
I had never seen anything like Parkersburg up close.
I've lived in Iowa my whole life, and I've never seen tornado damage like that.
Well, it's pretty humbling, to be honest with you, to know that Mother Nature can do such devastation to an area. I mean, it's like somebody just put their hand down and just wiped everything clean off the ground.
The amount of damage that a tornado can do is always a bit breathtaking. And you're talking about homes being destroyed, straw being driven into trees, and things like that, and see a pine tree with a 2x4 impaled through it.
When disasters occur, the Iowa Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management immediately goes to work to assist the affected local jurisdictions, coordinate the state's response efforts, and request assistance from its federal partners when necessary. The first step is usually opening the state's Emergency Operations Center, or SEOC.
We did not have any idea the EF scale of that tornado, but we were advised we needed to activate the SEOC, so I contacted operations staff and we started moving toward the SEOC to get it activated, notify other partners, and be aware of what we could be on hand to do to support the local response efforts.
When the Parkersburg tornado happened, it was Memorial Day weekend, and of course we were all with our families enjoying the holiday. I got the call from, I believe it was probably Joyce, saying that there had been a tornado. I hadn't heard it. I didn't have news on. Of course, when you get that kind of call, there's the urgency, and we needed to get there right away because I knew the media would start calling, and I had to be here and be ready to respond to that.
Our best intel was through DPS state radio. The law enforcement agents or the law enforcement entities that were on scene were funneling a lot of information to state patrol.
My wife and son and I were headed back to Des Moines, and it was just getting dark about that time. And I had just turned off of Highway 20 onto Highway 14, I think, which comes south out of Parkersburg when my phone rang, and it was one of our supervisors from Department of Public Safety calling, wanted to know how soon could I be in Parkersburg. And probably 15 minutes, and they were kind of astonished by that because they thought I was still in Des Moines. And I just told them, no, I said I just happened to be in town. And so I turned around and went back. My son and wife were still with me. By the time I'd gotten into town, it was dark. And so what they called me for is they needed somebody to kind of help manage the media. At that time, they really didn't have anybody specifically identified, and obviously there was a lot of national interest and a lot of media.
Got a call and was asked to pack a bag and be ready to go up to Parkersburg. And I left with one other person on the staff here at HSCMD, and we went up and arrived there. Again, it was the day after it had happened, and if you've never seen real tornado damage in a developed area, it is amazing how absolutely devastating that damage is. Anywhere the tornado touched was gone, and I'm not talking it was a little messed up, it was a little off its foundation, it had some shingles missing, it was gone.
Don't get me wrong, being in an F5 and that's impressive, but I think what impressed me more was the level of destruction it caused in town. If it was an F5 barreling through a bean field, really nobody's going to care. It's going to vacuum out the beans and whatever. But when it hit the town and it goes through that, and then you actually ended up, go back and you could see some of the videos. Like I remember the bank video. Their security system had video of the tornado coming into town, and you could see the inside of the bank, and all of a sudden the bank's shaking, the windows are blowing in, and stuff's moving through the building and all that. And so it was interesting from that aspect of it. But never had seen one that had gotten into a town like that.
And just to see the people
trying to rummage through what was left, and I just remember an elderly woman standing, you could see totally into her living room and her garage, and it was just the whole front of her house was ripped off and all her belongings, and she's trying to sort through stuff. And it was just, that's kind of an image of people that I remember, and my image of people as they go through these events. And it's one thing to respond to and to help people, but when you're the one in that event, that was kind of the picture in my mind that I remember.
You have to remember, it wasn't just Parkersburg. I think just kind of ping-ponged across that whole chunk of the state, hit a couple of different places. Obviously, Parkersburg got hit the hardest, but.
And I remember one situation, and it was in rural part of Black Hawk County, I believe. Older gentleman, it's a farmstead that we visited, and he was out just literally picking up damaged debris around his property. He was visiting or working on a project with his grandson. It was a restoration project of a 1970s vehicle of some sort, and they were almost done. His grandson was 15, just about ready to turn 16, and he was going to give that vehicle to him. And when he went to the garage to get it, it was gone. The actual tornado had taken it away. But at the end of the day, he says, "I'm alive. I survived. I'm out here picking up and trying to recover."
We were the initial liaisons to go up there and kind of take an assessment of what had happened and provide any input on resources that would be needed. Immediately, we asked for the kitchen sink. They're going to need everything. They need security for access, ingress, and egress to the roads. They need, damage assessment teams. They need folks to help backfill at the EOC there for the county. And a lot of the county coordinators, adjacent neighbors, had already started doing that, and that was nice to see.
We went from all the way from Parkersburg up into the area around Waterloo just to look at damages. So we drove up there. We hit Parkersburg first, and I was on the phone with Incident Command, and they were kind of direct us in where to go, and they gave us a street corner, and we got there, and you couldn't even see the streets. There was so much debris, and I'd known Parkersburg my entire life. I grew up in Eldora, and we played football against Parkersburg. I knew the town extremely well, and we pulled in, and it looked like a bomb had gone off. I've never seen that much devastation.
We didn't know where we were going to stay, how long each one of us were going to go. We were in different vehicles, and I remember coming into one part of town in Parkersburg, and the part we entered, there wasn't hardly any damage, and I was like, this is supposed to be really bad. Where's the damage at?
We got there, and I was in the car with the FEMA gentleman from FEMA, and it looked okay until you turned a corner.
And I remember driving around a corner and coming into the edge of where the damage was.
And then it was just twigs.
And I'd never seen anything like it. All I could say the whole time driving was, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh." I didn't have any words. It was, "Oh my gosh."
And I just kept saying, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh." I must have said it a lot, because he finally said, "Stop saying, oh my gosh, we have to get to work."
We were able to leverage the National Guard's communications staff, and they came up and ended up producing our own little newspaper. We held twice daily community meetings at the church, so we would inform people what was going on, and we had, of course, press conferences throughout the day, pretty much on the hour every hour.
Shortly after I arrived, that's when this IMT crew showed up at Parkersburg, and they started assisting Parkersburg with the response and recovery up there, which I think helped quite a bit, because it took some of the burden off of those local people to have to run the event, and they put it on the shoulders of the IMT folks, which did a great job.
Iowa's incident management team is comprised of mostly public safety officials, public safety guys from local communities. So there's like a lot of police, fire, EMS, some public health people that comprises this team. They all have regular jobs, but they volunteered to be on this special team to go in there and try to recover or respond to incidents at the local level.
And we have recovery staff, public assistance people started working with the community within the first 10 days. on various issues. And in fact, we had Homeland Security staff that worked with the city of Parkersburg exclusively, starting the day after the event, and pretty much stayed there for 2 years, I believe it was, to make sure that things worked out the way they needed to for that community.
That was kind of my home away from home for the first year and a half. I kind of learned on the fly, as everybody else did, what was all involved in the Stafford Act and all the requirements that were in place in order to make the communities whole again.
And in fact, if you look today, and I'm sure others will talk about this, the recovery in Parkersburg is pretty remarkable. So, but in the meantime, it was it was the kind of event that you don't want to see as an emergency management person. So
they had no electricity, no water. We realistically didn't have a place to work for the first little while. Then after that, about a month into it, FEMA brought in a double-wide trailer and set it down on one of the city's vacant parking lots. And that's what our office was. It was just kind of one end to the other, aluminum tables, elbow-to-elbow folding chairs. We didn't even have a restroom in this facility.
The one place I went by was a house that was literally leveled. I mean, the only thing left was the foundation and the debris from the home piled upon it. But there was a homemade sign on a piece of plywood that somebody had spray painted, house for sale, open floor plan. And it struck me really funny for obvious reasons. And all that devastation, somebody had the sense of humor to come up with something like that. I mean, it just kind of demonstrated the resilience of that community. And I was so impressed by how hard people were and how focused they were across the board to get that town back up and running.
So Dave Johnson and I, when we got to town, there wasn't a lot for us to do initially. We really wanted to look at damages on all parts of the town, all parts of the tornado path. So we went through Parkersburg, we talked to Incident Command, and then we decided that we were going to drive north and follow the path of the tornado. Some of the little towns that had been hit were absolutely devastated. But again, they were going through search and rescue. They were going through just damage assessments themselves of their own homes and things like that. When we got to Waterloo, we kind of lost the track of the tornado. And we stopped at a convenience store and said, hey, we're trying to figure out where the tornado went through here. We know it was really close to your store. And we tracked it up to where somebody's building a new barn up at the edge of town. And they said, well, the barn had actually been wiped out by the tornado. But Iowans are so progressive and so responsive that their neighbors had all got together and already had the frame up for a new barn. It was the following day. So that's how resilient Iowans are.
Every disaster leaves its mark. The events of the summer of 2008 will not soon be forgotten. Iowans will continue to diligently work to recover from whatever Mother Nature throws at them.